Hello and welcome back to Level Zero Literacy, everybody. My name is Mason, and I'm so proud to present to you our episode on Eastward. During the episode, we are going to spoil the events of the game from beginning to end, and we're going to cover topics that include, but are not limited to, death, dismemberment, and child trauma. So please use your best judgment before proceeding, and enjoy.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Level Zero Literacy. Today I am joined by co-host Mason.
Hello.
And today we are going to be discussing 2021 Zelda-like action RPG game Eastward. Eastward was developed by Shanghai-based studio Pixel. It was directed by Tomo Zhao and written by Chin Pan, Ye Fang, and Ziqi Liu. You follow the story of a young girl named Sam and her guardian John as they travel through a post-apocalyptic landscape, meeting a colorful cast of characters and ultimately learning about Sam's true nature. Will this duo be able to uncover the mysteries of the world before a new cycle of destruction is unleashed upon humanity? It is up to you and your trusty Pan to find out. Eastward began as a sketch from the lead artist Hong, who drew something that was similar to Hong Kong's Kowloon Walled City.
I've heard of this. Kowloon.
Kowloon, I believe that's how it's pronounced. And themes for Eastward include genetic engineering, parent-child relationships, and cycles of destruction and breaking said cycles. This is a game that I had played before we had even discussed the existence of this podcast, and it really stuck with me. But for a long time, I wasn't really able to place what it was about this game that clicked with me so much, because there's a lot of this game that is not good.
Right.
And I think that is, when I looked up kind of more information about the game and tried to get other people's thoughts and stuff that wasn't just reviews, everyone's like, this game is missing something, or there's it's just lacking in some kind of area. And it's I just don't think I don't think any of those things are accurate. I can see why people might come to that conclusion, but I think this game is actually suffering from doing too much rather than missing something from it. It's core. And I think the easiest way I can kind of put this is that, so the game itself, depending on how you approach it, is somewhere between 15 to low 20 hours. And I think in an ideal world, this game would be 10 hours long. There's a lot of bloats. There are chapters. Well, there's really one chapter that I feel doesn't serve any purpose. Well, it serves very minimal purpose. And there are chapters that are just simply not paced particularly well. And I think if they fixed all those issues and just let you stick to the high points of this game, then this game wouldn't be so as obscure as it was. I think people would be talking about it more.
It really contextualizes the thought process in making this game when you say it started out as a sketch, because in my mind, when I would play it, I would think this doesn't seem like a game where the writers and the artists had any kind of concrete vision. I think they were just sort of chasing a vibe that they really liked. And while that vibe does land in the context of the art and music of the game very well, there is, some things are just not paced well. Some things are just not, as you already mentioned, some things just don't quite connect in any good or meaningful way. I can definitely see where someone is oh, wouldn't it be cool if in this neo China that's in a post-apocalyptic realm, what if there were what if there was a big train that ran through everything, and there's like a big living whale that lives on top of a city.
Yeah.
And there's monkeys that make movies, and it just seems like they kind of just like actualized every single visual idea for creating the game. They didn't like say no to anything. They didn't trim anything. I think we got a game where nothing was left on the cutting room floor, or practically nothing.
Right.
From the context of like, they made the concept sketches and then they probably were like, okay, get all the concept sketches into the game.
Yep. Make the assets.
Yep. And then, once you have all that, you might as well not throw it away. You worked on it all. It's what I can't speak to the actual development of the game. I can only speak to what it feels like. And that's what it really felt like in a lot of the game.
They could have even realistically made a lot of these things optional.
Yeah.
And this is something you brought up during your playthrough is almost everything in the game is mandatory. There's a few secret areas where you can obtain powers for Sam in chapters 3 and 4, but the most of the content is mandatory. Outside of that, playing Earthborn itself is optional. There's some collection stuff that's optional. The typical things, the typical trappings you would associate with like an RPG adventure.
It's baffling how they chose what is mandatory and what is optional. Because if you never engage with Earthborn, Monk Hollywood makes a lot less sense.
Yeah.
But I don't know why you would ever not have Sam getting all of her abilities be optional, especially when there's only 3. Yeah. There's no reason to make that optional.
So the main thing, the biggest thing about this game for me is like how well it explores relationships. And, there's really there's 3 relationships in this game that are really brought to the forefront for the player. And that's John and Sam. That is William and Daniel, and Isabel and Alva. Yeah. Those are like the three most important duos of characters over the course of this game. There's tons and tons and tons of side characters. On the Wikipedia page for this game, there are 240 some NPCs, which is an absurd number to have in a game like this. The scope of it is just ridiculous for, a team. I think that was like 20 people.
I hold on. I'm going to push back on that a little bit. I think there's 6 NPCs, and I think there's 200 like jokes that they decided to put a face on. Because like most of these are not characters. They don't have any of the literary elements that we would say constitutes a character at all. Like the signboard guy, he doesn't have characteristics. He's there to like convey that it would be funny if that were to happen.
If it were to be someone's job to be a billboard.
A billboard. Yeah, like he's not there to be a character. He's there to be a joke. I think there's probably about 10 characters.
10 relevant characters at least.
Yeah.
At least characters that develop and change over time. This is also, I think, the first game we've played for the podcast where we have a silent protagonist.
Yeah, I think so.
So if you haven't played this game before, you as the player play as the duo of John and Sam, and John never says anything for the entirety of the game.
Not even that's true. There's a single line of dialogue where you can pick between 2 options that John says for some reason. I don't know why they put that in there.
But the intent is that John is silent. He's not mute because people do allude to him talking, but for whatever reason he is a silent character. And Sam, being somewhere between the ages of like 9 and 12 probably, just always talking, just like constant unending barrage of speech. So when I originally played this game, I actually really liked the dynamic of John being a silent protagonist, because it's never about like Sam and John bouncing off of each other as characters. It's more about Sam's enthusiasm about the world and allowing Sam to grow and progress, whereas John is this constant unchanging force who is just trying to get by.
I don't know if it is like a normal element of storytelling in China or based on the works that inspired the artists. I thought that was a really strong point of characterization in the
Yeah.
game because, like, sometimes it's fun to play a game that is just about sort of the journey of a character that is sort of done growing and learning through sort of uncertain times. Sometimes it's not about a character having some sort of moral to learn or some flaw to overcome. A lot of times those are nice elements to have in a story. But in this sense, like, you get to see that in Sam, and then John, he is characterized in ways despite being speechless.
Yeah.
Like, you see him as very stoic. You see him as a very, like, tired old man. This comes through more in the art and in the music. Another strong point, another strong presentation for those elements of the game. So, not to say that John has no defining characteristics. He
Yeah.
certainly does.
It's not. It's not. Yeah. It's not that John doesn't feel like a character. In fact, he very much does. The way he kind of because by being nonverbal, the way he reacts to the world around him becomes much more, allows you, the player, to kind of like build out the character of John in your head. But I also think it's important to note that Sam as a character would not work as well as she does if John spoke a lot in this game. I think that the magic would kind of be lost if, let's say he keeps his same characterization of being, kind of like soft spoken, but like gruff and tumble kind of guy. Would the dialogue that a character like that would put out really bring out an element of Sam that would be made better by him doing that? I don't think so. I actually don't think that's the case. I think this is genuinely the best thing they could have made, the best choice they could have made for the game, because of how everything plays out. It allows you to see how a child put through this situation would have to grow and morph over time. It allows Sam to shine because John is simply playing, for lack of a better term, second fiddle to her adventure, her undertaking.
Yeah.
So I really respect the developers of this game for being able to take a silent protagonist and make it work so well in the story that they wanted to tell.
I don't know if this was an intentional choice, but I was kind of rolling my eyes towards the end of the length of the game to begin with. It drags a lot.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if I would be able to handle another entire character's worth of story and growth in a game that is already this full to the brim with just stuff, things that don't serve to enhance the game experience, but in some ways just sort of tend to exhaust me as the player. If John had like a whole big thing, like, to think that there could be another 5 hours of this game, just it sounds exhausting.
It's yeah, can't even imagine. So we'll just kind of talk through the story a bit, talk through the chapters, and we'll go through most of them pretty briefly because I think this game is very. I told Mason, and obviously we kept bucking on the conversation while we were playing this game. I think this game has a very Metal Gear Solid 2 style ending where it is incredibly backloaded. A lot of things are alluded to over the course of the game, but the actual reveals and narrative weight of the game really don't happen until that last chapter. So, you kind of wake up, you live underground, you don't really have any idea what's happening. You get this opening cutscene where John finds Sam in this like laboratory thing, and then you're just like trying to live your normal life. Things go poorly, and you basically get banished from the underground by this super corrupt mayor and put on a regular ass train to go eastward.
And that is all that you ever. They take a lot of time developing this whole chapter, and then you just never see them again.
Yeah,
that was one of the most infuriating. I'm going to brag on this game a lot, listeners. In case you haven't picked up on it, 15 minutes in, I'm going to rag on this game a lot. There are elements which are genuinely good, but this was infuriating. I kept, remarking to Sam as Sam watched me play through the game. I was like, oh, I get it. This is the point where the mayor's going to return.
Yeah.
Because he seems to be the only one in the know. Surely they made the mayor know all these secrets about this cryptic world for a reason.
Yeah.
Surely he's not just like in the know and bad for like completely unjustifiable reasons simply to be a foil. But no, he never comes back.
He never comes back.
None of the people in there ever come back. You have like dreams about him where they briefly reappear. They in like very insignificant parts of the game. But
the only point that's really relevant of any of the underground stuff is setting up William and Jasper as characters for down the line.
Yeah. Yeah.
It kind of gives you a concept of what normal is like in this world, but so does New Dam City. So it really is crazy to me how long you spend in Pot Croc Isle, because there's no real reason that it needs to go on for that long.
I really think Chapter 2 could have been Chapter 1.
Yeah.
I think there could have been 7 chapters to this game. They could have cut out this
could have just been
entirely.
this could have been a prologue. It could have been 30 minutes.
There's no reason that White Whale Isle couldn't have had a mine.
Yeah.
Where John dug up Sam. Now there have to be people like living underground, which never reappears as an element. Strange.
And when we talk about the ending, I'll kind of bring you in up to speed on it a little bit to kind of explain a lot of this stuff that is weird. There's definitely a world where they could have opened the game on John and Sam boarding the train after getting kicked out of Pot Croc Isle. I think the intent of the first chapter is to just show the relationship of Sam and John as it is, and show like what their intents are for like their lives and for their world before everything kind of begins to unravel, right? I can see the intent is like, oh, we need to establish what normal is for people that are living in this like crazy upside down world. They're living underground. There's like something going on, some kind of apocalyptic event going on that's kind of in the background, but it's always a threat, but it's really not an issue as long as they're living under there. But yeah, I agree. There's a lot of time spent that just could have been cut. This is probably one of the, if there were 2 chapters to cut, it would probably be 1 and 7.
Yeah. Also, all those stakes are every single element you just said or almost every element is present in Chapter 2.
Yeah.
Except they also have this like tragic story for John where he loses this sort of will they won't they romantic thing.
Yeah.
That like disattaches his connections from what would be his hometown if they started in Chapter 2.
So Chapter 2 is after you boarded the train with Jasper, probably the least interesting main character of the game. You get to a place called White Whale Bay. It is and sort of like idyllic countryside town
me of like a little German, like out in the hills.
Yeah,
where everything is like small and
everyone knows each other.
Yeah,
everyone's trying to get you to hook up with Uva. Because she's the bachelorette. She is the girl.
And everyone's like, it's like such a nice community, and they grow to depend on John in the small time that they're together. It's so nice. It's such a fun little area. The art is amazingly evocative. It's called White Whale Bay because at the train station where you land, there's a giant swimming pool on top of a huge pool on top of the train station with a whale living inside.
Yeah.
That's very fun.
It's very and the craziest thing is like none of that stuff is ever really explained. Like some of the crazy like art direction and stuff is just like set dressing, and that's okay.
Sometimes I want to be in a world where don't exposit. I get it. Sometimes you just want to put fun things in because they look nice. Don't exposit it.
Yeah.
That was a great decision. There's a whale that lives up there. No one ever talks about it because he's there all the time.
Yeah.
You would not talk about, we don't talk about like, the theater in downtown Greensboro.
The big reveal in chapter 2 is your first experience going into one of these laboratories, these like cloning facilities that are put in place to further the advancement of human evolution. And this is also where we get our first experience with Mother, who is this disembodied version of Sam that has, I think the easiest way to put it, that has like all the knowledge that Sam has ever had over her many lives, because Sam herself is a clone and is, we'll get to this more later, but the ultimate form of evolution for or believed to be the ultimate form of evolution for humanity. So, flick the switch, turn the miasma on, and Wai-Welbe gets like completely engulfed in miasma, which is like this toxic goo stuff that just kills everything, spawns monsters, just causes problems. I think it's really interesting that the next day before all this events happen is Harvest Day.
Yeah.
Which is a little hackneyed in
It's
a
on the
sense.
nose. It's on the nose.
It's very like, oh, okay, I get what's happening here.
Yeah, they're harvesting all the people.
Yeah. And then back on the train, you meet Isabel for the first time. You meet Isabel as John and Sam for the first time. You meet her as a character in chapter 1, and then you go to where the majority of the game happens, which is New Dam City. And even this chapter kind of epitomizes a lot of my issues with the game, because their chapters 3 and 4 are both really, really long.
Oh, yeah.
Really long.
Just doing like strange, inconsequential stuff.
Yeah.
You're, go find my sons, and you do that, and it's like, okay, well, now you got to go find the ingredients. Oh, the ingredients didn't work for. Now you got to go find the sons again, and then go find more ingredients, and it's like, it's exhausting.
This is the chapter where it's like it feels like they built out all these NPCs, and they really wanted you as a player to engage with everything, and so they just, instead of making all these things side quests, they decided to instead make them a part of the main story. And I think even if the things in here were side quests, a lot of people would engage with them, right? So, like, for example, the subway system is pretty much irrelevant except for this, like, the time it takes you to the hot springs. You can just walk between New Dam City and the other main stop of the subway system. There's no reason you have to fix that. But that would be a perfect opportunity to encourage the player to engage with these other side characters, because, now you have a fast travel option, which you normally have anyways, between these two locations that normally you couldn't move between. So like but they kind of kneecap themselves because there is fast traveling in the game just for New Dam City, except for this one back and forth you have to do like on the outskirts of the city.
So it's so weird. It's, and like towards the end of the chapters, and like even in parts at the end of the game, you have like reunions with these characters that you're doing this stupid busy work for. It would just be, I know I personally would have enjoyed it a lot more if it was like you meet a guy and he's like, go find my sons. You don't got to do it, but if you do it all 3 times or whatever, you get like this special thing at the end of the game that's like, you went through this small effort to go find the guys. Or you get like a heart piece, or, just something. Just like, don't make me do it, 4 times to break up this weird fetch quest that you've done another 3 times.
Now, the thing about all this is that I actually, the meat of the story of chapters 3 and 4 is actually really good and a high point of the game. I think Lee, Alva, and Isabel are all really good characters. I like Lee a lot. I think the way the food quests are like kind of annoying because you see what's coming as it's happening. But I like how Lee is characterized as this like holier than thou, king guy at the top of the hill, like literally speaking, lives at the top of this city. He's a low life in a world that's not apocalyptic. He would be a worse person, but he actually like cares about the people of this city. So it's really cool to see him develop as a character from a sense of, oh, this is how this is how he always is, but it takes the right kind of people to work these traits out of him.
I also, this is a very small, inconsequential complaint. I think they should let me play the casino.
Yeah.
Why can I not do that? Why can I not go salt gambling? Also, I don't want to be like a lore guy because I don't really care about lore all that much as I do narrative. But like, why is salt a currency anywhere else other than underground? It's very strange, especially when they have coins and stuff.
Yeah.
Very just weird.
It was weird choice, but again, it's one of those things that's like it was probably one of the ideas they came up with, and it just stuck at some point.
I do love Isabel and Alva as characters. This is a fantastic way to meet them. Alva and Sam are particularly very sweet. They have this sort of very saccharine dynamic together. It's very nice, especially since like you've had 2 chapters where just like some very difficult dark things have come up over and over.
Yeah.
With like without any sort of way to break the tension in between. It's very nice to have this time to sort of breathe, to think of John as this man who is like seeking this normalcy that he has been deprived of his whole life or has recently lost for being a what do they call him, an idealist?
Yeah.
Again, something that never comes up again after that. Just and like there are parts of this game where it lets the game's trying to do a lot. It's trying to be this hero's journey adventure. It's trying to be this very tense thriller. It's trying to be a little bit of a mystery and having times where we just cut the tension and the characters get to breathe a little bit is a very welcome change because it doesn't always handle those other hats it's wearing in a very tactful way.
So I guess technically you're actually here for 3 chapters. You're here for 3 through 5, which is too much, too long. Again, could have been condensed down a bit. But the only point where we start actually getting to matters of consequence is when the miasma is encroaching on the city, and now we have to activate this gigantic fan that's powered by the dam to basically blow all the miasma back down the dam or whatever, however you want to justify it. And over the course of this, the first time everything works out, but the miasma comes back, and due to the unpreparedness of everyone, Alva gets
Killed?
She's not killed like at that moment. She's just like mortally wounded.
She's kind of killed.
Yeah.
It's kept sort of intentionally vague because they sort of play on so like after chapter 5, Isabel takes Alva, who has now become a sort of hero to the city for her actions in repelling the miasma, and goes off to see if she can get her cured. And the idea that you don't know if she's dead or not, sort of, they play with the motivations of Isabel, which is a really cool thing. The townspeople are like, yeah, she kidnapped our hero. And you're thinking like, well, did she? Or did she like, was Princess dead, and she went to go try and save her for the town. There's a little bit of play there.
Yeah. Lee literally tells you a story about when Isabel first showed up to New Dam City and his dog approached Alva and she just killed it. Like Isabel killed the dog without like even thinking or worrying about it. They've always had this it's always been like a protectorship from Isabel to Alva. Now, in the wikis and stuff, it says that, like, I've read that it says that they're in a relationship, and there is like one scene that does like allude to that a little bit, where they're sitting at a bar kind of like after all the events of the first time using the fan. And this is one of those things that, because of the pacing of the game, they had more time to flesh out this relationship, but it felt like they were worried about making things more concrete than they came across.
I don't know. It doesn't make a huge world of difference to me whether or not they're lovers. It doesn't recontextualize a lot, just like a small sort of facet of Isabel's behavior, right? It changes like a part of her motivations. It would be nice if that were the case. I personally would love to live in a world where it was they were romantically involved, but even if they aren't, I don't see it as that impactful with regards to the story.
One other thing I want to know about this chapter is that this is our first run-in with the character Solomon. We see Solomon as a child, probably similar age to Sam at this point. And he is meant to be like this harbinger, I guess. I think Solomon is probably the weakest. It's tough because like it feels like Solomon was put in the game to provide an antagonist for sort of like the middle chunk of the game, because the actual follow through of him as a character doesn't really hit all that consistently over the course of the game's runtime, especially as you meet him later in chapter 7.
He is also indicative of some very confusing things about the story, because, in later chapters of the story, there's this sort of time thing going on that he is both not a part of as someone who is in New Dam City, but also a part of as a citizen of Esther City. And
my read on this game, or my read on Solomon as a character, is that those are like 3 different Solomons, and they're
like
clones.
Yeah.
Obviously the oldest Solomon that you see in chapter 7 is the original, and then the other 2 are clones of him that were probably cloned in one of the cloning facilities, but by Solomon, and then like trained to do his bidding, more or less, trained to like try to bring a stop to the madness of the cycles of destruction.
I could see that. It's just that like,
no, it's not.
It's never directly addressed.
Yeah, so it's not captured very well. It's not addressed very well.
Which, I know I just said don't exposit everything, but you add all these elements of like time travel and time looping and time acting weird. And then you have the same character aging differently than everyone else, and it's like, well, now you've like created this like curiosity about this thing that you're never really gonna go into.
You need to exposit the things that are important.
Yeah, the thing, things that are like narrative important, narratively very important. The white whale, perfectly fine with you letting that hang. I'll draw my conclusions. You've added time travel to the mix, and now you've got this character aging different than everyone else. And I really like him as the young guy and the teenager. And then when he's old, I'm like, oh, I kind of want the other one back.
That's right, Past Mason. Hey, it's mid-roll ad Mason, here to tell you to rate us 5 stars on whatever app you've decided to listen to us on. We always appreciate it. You can also subscribe to our many social media feeds, including Facebook, YouTube, and now TikTok. We hope to see you there. I'll throw you back.
We should also talk about William and Daniel here a bit. William was originally a inhabitant of Pakrak Isle. He was similarly banished for his beliefs like John and Sam were, and Jasper, who we're not going to talk about much because he's pretty whatever. William has built himself a robotic stand-in for his son because William's son was not banished with him.
Yeah.
You know, Sam and John were banished together because Sam was actually the one saying the heretical things, and John just like wasn't putting a stop to it in any sense, and really just wanted to like go and protect Sam because that's like the main thing he cares about in this world. So it's really interesting to see William because I think watching the dynamics of William trying to like do right by the stand-in son that he's created because he can't do right by his human son is really interesting to like as they play off of each other, you know. Daniel the Daniel robot has a lot of the same mannerisms as the human Daniel. So, you know, the robot has a stutter the same way the same way the human Daniel does. You know, there's a lot of, you can tell that William probably made this robot out of grief. And I think it's really interesting to see him act so aloof about everything because it's almost directly opposite of how John treats everything, where John is like, without having to say anything, very dedicated and very much like cares about everything that's going on and like puts himself behind all the causes that Sam is so wrapped up in.
Yeah. And I don't know. I think William is sort of my favorite of the base cast. I think he embodies what the game is trying to communicate the best, which is, you know, the game is about sort of, in my view, these sort of cycles of really terrible apocalyptic things happening, and then we have like an older generation that kind of wishes they could have got it right and wants so badly for these younger generations to have it better, but for one reason or another they like, you know, were never able to get the hang of living in their society, or because they're bad at communicating, or because they have had some sort of failure in life. They are unable to reach some kind of harmony with these younger generations and unable to prevent these disasters. I think in, you know, viewing things through that lens, William and Daniel work really well.
Yeah. I think they're excellent characters. I think the way that they progress with you through the end of the game is one of the highlights of the game. You know, I think the dynamic of William and Daniel versus John and Sam is like a really important addition to like all those characters' growth and journey over the course of this game, because I think William sort of learns and discovers all this stuff about being a parent through the partnership with John and Sam.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he starts to be more open as the game goes on. You know, the first time you meet him, it feels like he's very closed off. He's only talking about like being a merchant and like being the world's best merchant or whatever.
Yeah.
But the humanness starts to break through those cracks the more time you spend with him, and the more time you allow him not just to develop a relationship with Daniel, but also Sam and John as they journey together. So you finally leave New Dam City after spending a large majority of the game there. You end up in Moncollywood, the obvious, and it's chapter 6, not chapter 7.
This is where the pacing really starts. You know, some things I'm willing to let go. This is where it's like I can't let this go. They introduced this really interesting aspect of
funny
this.
concept.
No, I mean like right before you get to Moncollywood,
Oh,
right?
sure, the
We
time
introducing this like time loop thing, and they kind of allude to the fact that maybe like a lot of time has passed, like years and years, or like maybe you're going to be trapped here forever and you like can't figure it out. And then we have this moment of triumph where like we use the lucky coin and we outrun the train and we're going to get there. And then we like, it's like, well, no, just kidding. Now go do Moncollywood for 4 hours. It's like, I don't want to do that.
I don't want to talk about Moncollywood much because I hate it. I think it is. I get the intent of Moncollywood. It feels like it was meant to be a sort of comedic relief to give the players a break after the ending events of New Dam City, which are very grim. You know, you leave New Dam City in a very uncertain state. The princess is gone. The main protector of the city is gone. Lee is kind of the de facto leader at this point, and he's not really a charismatic person. He's as like two people. He's charismatic in the sense that he's intimidating, but not charismatic in the sense that I think people would, you know, kind of just blindly follow him.
But they're not interested. The game's not interested in exploring that dynamic. The game's interested in getting you to Esther City,
right?
And like doing this little funny thing.
Yeah. So I just really wish they just hadn't put this chapter in the game. I don't know what else to say.
It's like the comedy doesn't land for me because it's like a lot of jokes about butt sex with the monkeys, and you know they do like a little bit of physical comedy, like visual comedy. That doesn't really land for me either. And then they do like a little bit of character work where they're like, ooh, this monkey is an actor and has infinite time to be an actor, but he gets sick before all of his auditions. It's like, that's not a funny concept. Like everything just misses for the entire chapter, and it's a complete slog. You do have a cool boss fight at the end. Solomon shows back up and is like, oh, I've been here the whole time, and I'm actually, everyone knows me in Moncollywood. I'm not like hiding.
He's the producer.
I'm a producer here in Moncollywood, and no one mentioned me. And it's like, what? Why did it seems like it'd be a big deal. Like someone would mention it because in the course of the chapter, you get like cast as an actor and stuff like, it's like, why am I just learning about this?
Yeah, we have the other producer. It's fine.
It's so weird. It's so bad. So weird and bad. I did not like Moncollywood. I was like, I kept asking like, you know, like how much more of this is there?
And the answer is always too much.
Yeah,
there's always too much Moncollywood left because any amount of Moncollywood is too much Moncollywood. But eventually, you get Alva's jet, or you get Isabel's jet, or rocket, or whatever, and by attaching that to the top of the iron carbine, you're able to push on to Esther City, where things start to be cool again. Because the start of this chapter actually just puts you... I'm going to back up here a second. Esther City is trapped in a time loop. It has been since the beginning of the existence of miasma. It was put over the city to protect the city from the events of this apocalypse. But as a result, all these people have been trapped inside of it for God knows how long.
Just reliving the same day over and over.
Over and over.
Also, Esther City, strangely enough, aesthetically speaking, far in the future of everywhere else you go.
Yeah.
Despite the fact they're in a time loop, you're just going to have to accept that. That's just part of the game.
I think it makes sense if you're looking at it from the perspective of everywhere else is post-apocalyptic, and this place has been kept as a bastion of what the society was before the apocalypse.
Yeah, maybe the miasma just blasts everything back into the Stone Age. You know, but like at the beginning of the game when you're underground, it's like, you know, those people... Purportedly, the reason they're underground is because the miasma doesn't go down there.
Yeah.
Like, why do they not live in an advanced society? Strange.
Well, because society didn't exist down there, they had to build it.
It's just weird to me.
Yeah. So, as Chapter 7 opens, you actually find yourself at the beginning of one of these time loops at Solomon's funeral. And so now you, the player, are confused as to what the fuck is going on because this isn't at all where I left off in the last chapter.
Yeah.
And I thought when I played it for the first time, I was like, oh, this is a cool device. This is a cool way to do this, because rather than finding myself stuck in a time loop, it's now I have to actually unravel what my place is in all of this, rather than just being like spawning into it, like crossing the barrier into the time loop. And now I just like have timed days or whatever. You still have the timed days, but the way everything plays out is as if you've been here all along.
They also do a really neat trick where, like, late in your adventures in the chapter, they establish that being in the time loop can make your memory weird.
Yeah.
So
Smart.
it recontextualizes at the beginning of the chapter, like, oh, we were just in the time loop for a little while and it made our memory a little weird.
Yeah.
That's why things looked like they felt like they skipped around a little. It's very cool.
I think if I were to pick a chapter that in this game that is probably the best executed, it would probably be this one. I think they were able to take their concept and just really fine tune it to the point where it doesn't feel contrived. Because there's a lot of this game that's like references to existing IPs or, paying homage to like other things. This is like the first thing in this game that I felt was both a novel concept that had been used in an original way and stuck the landing.
Yeah, I completely agree. This is the best. I would go so far as to say this is the best executed chapter in nearly every aspect.
Yeah.
I wish the rest of the game had been at the quality of Chapter 8 because it was very, very good.
Chapter 7.
Excuse me, 7. It's just like, you kind of... You're going through this chase scene where Isabel is also trapped in the time loop, or was or will be trapped in the time loop. You're not quite sure how the timeline is going. You meet these people who, they do this very like heroic sacrifice for you.
The Rocket Knight Legion.
Which another thing that doesn't mean a ton if you didn't complete Earthborn.
Yeah.
But like, it's very cool because they're like, yeah, we're going to help you out today, and tomorrow we're not going to remember any of this.
Yeah.
And it's like it creates a tense story moment with like all these allies you have to venture around and like convince them to work with you.
One of them's Frankenstein's monster.
Yeah, one of them's Frankenstein's monster. That's
not
really
explained.
funny.
Great, love it.
One's a wizard with a big pointy hat. That's my favorite type of character. And it's just like it makes me long for a game that was written like this.
Yeah. The dungeon's cool. Like, this is probably the best dungeon in the game.
Yeah, this was the only one that like made me actually like activate the neurons in my brain.
Yeah, this game's not hard. I think
there's like elements that make me think it's for kids, and then there's other elements that are like this is not appropriate for kids.
Yeah,
the puzzles are the kiddie part.
Yeah, some of the animation and joke choices are. Well, yeah, we're not gonna get too. I don't want to get too deep. That.
We can do. You remember when we did the 60 seconds against Dragon Age? We can do that at the end.
Eastward.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't think I've. I feel like I don't know. I do like this game a lot in spite of its flaws.
I like it better than Dragon Age. I'll say by a lot. But
yeah. So, the ending of Chapter 7 is you break the time barrier that has been keeping Esther City and the stasis for so long. And in doing so, basically skips everything forward to where it should be, causing all the buildings to become dilapidated. Everyone's gone. They don't die in the traditional sense. It's not like, oh, they existed and now there's corpses all over the city. It's like they were there and now they have like ceased to exist because they should have been dead for so long.
It's almost like a timeline correction. It's like
Yeah.
they're alive and then the city's been abandoned for 1,000 years.
Yeah. Yeah, we never really get a solid answer for like how long all of this has been happening.
We never really get a solid answer for anything.
Yeah. So after Chapter 7, Charon, the train shows up at Esther City, and Sam and Mother kind of like converge and board Charon, And then, through a series of events, robot Daniel ends up not dying because it's a robot, but like sacrificing himself. And now John is left to get on the iron carbine to give chase to Charon, which brings us to chapter 8, which is called Mother. And interspersed throughout the game, there are these moments where there is basically just text that comes up on the screen and kind of like fills in the gap between the thing that just happened and the thing that's about to happen, kind of gives you some emotional concepts to grasp onto, or like, really just like allowing the player to kind of like sit with the things that are happening. And I think the thing and the reason I haven't brought this up before now is because most of them are just kind of like a meditation. But I think this one's actually really important, the one that happens as John is chasing Charon, because it mentions that it is this time John does not hesitate.
Yeah.
Which is a weirdly specific thing to say. Like, has this happened before? What are we to surmise about John's past from that? There's not a lot of characterizing moments for John throughout this game because it's not about him. But that was for me, that moment like stuck out to me. Like, what was the intent of writing this line this particular way? And I don't know. We don't really get a clear answer to that, and I wish we did.
There are some elements about the ending that contextualize that a little better.
Yeah.
Right? But, we see the 1,000 Alvas. From that, we can kind of, it's not explicitly stated, but we can kind of intuit that there's probably lots and lots of clones of all the other important people, or maybe just everyone, right? Maybe that's why Karen's so big.
So let's start to break down this Metal Gear 2 Solid ending a little bit. So you get onto Charon. It is this infinitely big interior space. Obviously, it doesn't make any sense for it to be the actual interior of this train. You just kind of brush that aside, suspend your disbelief a little bit. And the things you learn are basically that the intent of all of this is to help humanity reach its natural evolutionary apex.
Yeah.
Through a series of life, death, and rebirth.
Basically, like culling events, right?
Yeah.
They grow. There's not really a powers that be.
Yeah.
There is like a people from the past that had the idea that we'll regrow humans and then we'll cull them every so often. And then there's like 3 elements that they create in order to do this. The egg that can grow people, which is a sort of device that you see in all these labs throughout. Sam, who is the one who can take those and turn them into real people. And then Charon, who is sort of the arbiter of death, right?
And Sam herself, or Mother, and those are kind of interchangeable, is already the apex of human evolution, as they put it. And so it is her duty to basically oversee humanity until it reaches such a point as it is like caught up with her. So through this, you are left to surmise that the people you met in Chapter 2 in Whitewell Bay were all clones the entire time. And that's why it was a more picturesque, blinders on type of society, not really aware of the things that are going on with the world because they have only existed for, 10 years or whatever. They've only been around for a significantly shorter period of time than the ages of those people might dictate. So, and then, counter to that, the people of Pockrock Isle and the people of New Dam City have been around. Those are actual people and not clones of people. They have their ancestry goes presumably for most of them before the apocalyptic events. Some of the people in New Dam City are meant to be clones, or
Isabel is definitely meant to be a clone.
Isabel, we know for
and
sure.
Alva, excuse me.
Yeah, we know Isabel and Alva are for sure from whatever scientific experiments are a part of this, because it is directly alluded to by the characters that they just showed up one day. They weren't like born in New Dam City, but there were a lot of people in New Dam City before those people showed up. So Alva's grandfather was the same way, where he just kind of like showed up in town one day. So, the inventions of those people and the Buddha fan that blows all the miasma away could be the understanding of people who were cloned or created or whatever, knowing the cycles of life and rebirth and death, and then making countermeasures to stop those things. Now, the actual recontextualization of all this, I never really know how much it actually feels like it matters outside of chapter 2. Obviously, looking back now on chapter 2, it matters a lot, but it's really hard to feel connected to all of that when I didn't get to spend that much time with the people in chapter 2, but I spent so much time with the people of New Dam City.
So you compared this revelation to that of Metal Gear Solid 2, and I'm also going to compare it to that, just to sort of talk you through my thoughts on it, right?
Sure.
Metal Gear Solid 2, the entire time you're playing the game, a lot of things make absolutely no sense, and no matter how you try and wrap your head around them, they continue to elude your cognition until you get to the ending, and then it recontextualizes everything in such a good way that it answers most, if not all, of your questions, and sort of fills in all the blanks really perfectly, right?
Right.
In Eastward, not only was it pretty easy to draw some lines from the beginning, for instance, in the lab that you first reach in Whitewell Bay, there's human beings growing in tanks, and you read some text that talks about Harvest Day. This is not that hard to piece together. And then the people in the village talk about it's Harvest Day, and then they all get harvested by the miasma. Right. It is not hard to fill in the blanks of something that could feasibly be going on here. But what I was thinking in my head was a lot cooler and a lot more interesting than what actually ended up being the case.
Sure.
In the story. Because I was like, what if these people are in a cult? Or what if there's some weird scientific eugenicists that are harvesting? Or what if there's some kind of Matrix inspired human battery that all these people plug into every year?
Yeah.
And then they let the clones out. And it's oh no, it's Sam did it. It is weird eugenicists, but it's just only Sam now.
Yeah.
And it's man.
Well, the eugenicist created Sam and tasked her with following through on this process. The cloning facility that we see Alva in is supposed to be Sam.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
The final sequences of this game, I think, are really, really cool, but I don't. It is a mixed bag, because I think the duel with Isabel is really cool. They finally give you some more interesting and unique battle mechanics that are not used anywhere else in the game except for the final boss.
They pay off all these things you've heard about Isabel.
Yep.
Isabel comes off looking scared and looking like a coward for after chapter 5, and then you have this fight, and it's oh no, she's actually a really mighty warrior. She's actually this is just because she's scared for Alva. It pays off this in an interesting way.
And then after you defeat Isabel, you're able, like Alva's. So you kind of have to suspend your disbelief a lot in this game because like crazier and crazier things happen as the game progresses. And I guess like some of it is like they're trying to ease you into some of the absurdities of the game world, but Charon is like able to merge with like the consciousnesses of people, and through that Alva is able to like speak and talk sense into Isabel, you know, that like cloning Alva does not fix that the real Alva is dead, and like at this point definitively dead, you know. And that moment is pretty well done. I think it's not as well done as what comes later, but I do think it's a good conclusion to Isabel and Alva's storyline through this game.
It's fine. I don't have really anything particularly good or bad to say about it. You're right that it does require quite a bit of suspension of disbelief, but I just got done with 4 hours of Monk Hollywood, so like I was kind of itching for like anything even halfway serious.
Yeah. And then you get to the final like sequence of the game where Sam has to confront the mother entity, who is effectively at this point gone rogue and is continuing this cycle of destruction, probably way more than is necessary at this point. It's not entirely clear like what the actual endpoint of this entire thing would be, and so it is just left to be presumed that it would continue forever, you know, indefinitely. And you get to do this really cool fight against fucking dragon, which is great.
Really cool.
Really
well done too.
Really well done final sequence.
There's good boss battles in this game. They're genuinely very fun.
Yeah. And you beat the final boss, and Sam merges with Mother in a sort of like self-sacrificing moment.
It's more like I read it as sort of an acceptance of like Sam's deeds as Mother. Yeah. There's a rejection throughout the game that Sam is the same entity as Mother. Sam's always like, I'm not you. I don't do what you did. And when Solomon like recognizes her, she's like, that's not me. And then there's like an acceptance when faced with all of the things revealed in Charon, that Sam's like, oh, I mean, I am kind of this person.
Yeah. You have to go through all these like really trippy sequences of like reliving moments that have happened throughout the game, and like multiple Sams appear and you have to like find the right one, and then like the mother entity like tricks you into thinking she's Sam, and like all this other stuff. And God, I don't know why I cried at the ending. I don't know.
Oh, with the new Sam?
No, not even that. The just like Sam's death, like Mother's death, where John is like holding her. There's this like really striking visual imagery that happens at the end where like John is like drowning in an ocean, and it's not until Sam and Mother like converge that the ocean like dissipates and John is able to, you know, exist. And the body of Sam just like falls and he catches her. And I don't know why. I don't know why after all this game that I was so mixed on, and like not everything clicked for me, but I cried both when I played it for myself and when I watched you get to that moment. And I don't know what it is. I think it's just because what is so special to me about this game is Sam and John's relationship. And because it was so well done and well characterized over the course of this game, like their bond and their relationship, that this moment really did feel devastating to me. Because, you know, there's that meme where it's like, you know shit gets serious when the dad with the big bushy monobrow lifts it up and you can see the eyes.
Yeah.
And there's only like 2 moments in this game where that happens for John. And the first time is when he gets on the train to chase Charon, and then the second time is here when he like catches Sam and like has to hold her in his arms as she whatever is going on, you know.
I mean, it is striking. The game conveys a lot very well visually. So I think you're just relating very well to what is being communicated strictly artistically, strictly visually, because like, you know, while the story lacks in some elements, it's not like you didn't experience this journey. It's not like you weren't. It's not like the art and the music are not evocative.
Yeah.
They're very evocative. It's very good at conveying things that way. I think that plays a much larger role than the narrative in why that moment hits emotionally.
Sure. And then, you know, after everything, you know, Sam is like, he'll see me again. And then it cuts to this, you know, many years later, and John is just like sitting at a bus stop, and another, probably the last clone of Sam is like there.
It might be a new John. Who knows?
Probably not. I don't think it is. I think it's meant to be the same John, because it's specifically talking about how he recognizes her and is like caught off guard by her existence. But it's just, I don't know, it's a nice like little bittersweet moment to end off the game where there's this new Sam who's looks probably in her mid to late teens.
Yeah.
That doesn't know John at all, but like now John
also like the way she acts and talks is effectively that of a different person.
Yeah. But it's like now John has like a purpose again.
Yeah.
Because it looks like he's just been wandering to wander, more or less.
Yeah. Can I talk a bit about Mother's portrayal in the last chapter?
Well, so I was going to say, so then credits roll, and then after that, you get to see that William has returned home to Pockrock Isle, gotten his son, Daniel, and now is like a complete family unit again. It looks like more like, well, like put together as a person and a father figure.
Mm-hmm. So, can I talk about the portrayal of Mother in the last chapter?
Yeah.
This is another scenario where what you imagine, you know, where your imagination fills in the blanks is more interesting than what the game explores on its own. And I don't know if like at this point in development they were like crunched for time, or if they wrote this part like early, but like there's like a world that I was thinking of, like, oh, you know, all the times that you see Mother in the game, that Mother appears like solely to Sam, right? She's kind of misanthropic, and she shows like really callous disregard for human life, and she's very aloof and angry and mean and just like this antagonistic figure. And there's this like really cool idea that I could have that's like, what if she's like that way because she knows that all these people are going to die? She can't get attached to them. It's not like a misanthropy. It's more of a sort of callous detachment.
Measures, yeah.
Yeah, it's like a detachment because she knows that all these people are not worth getting emotionally attached to because they're going to be culled. They're going to be harvested. But you know, they don't really explore that. They don't, you know, Mother is just like has this, there's a different thing that happens, and I don't want to say it's a bad thing. It's just like not what I intuitively thought would be the case, and is like a little worse than it. Because you have this like heart-to-heart moment where Sam has this coming to terms with her being the same person and being responsible for the things that Mother's responsible for.
Right.
Which is nice. It's just like maybe like the immediately apparent thing would not have been the bad thing. Maybe this time we like didn't subvert.
I think that this is part of the issue with making Solomon the antagonist throughout the mid part of the game, is that you kind of forget about Mother. They kind of forget to develop, like continue to develop Mother as a character, because, oh, we have this other antagonistic force now, so we don't need to worry about talking about the actual main protagonist of the end game, the person that's going to be there at the end. Because there's plenty of opportunity for them to keep bringing Mother back as a character and fleshing her out more, and they kind of just don't.
It's very strange. It's very strange. She's like she's not absent for the second act, but like during the first
Largely
act,
absent.
during the first act, you see her like all the time, and there's this it's part of what is trying to be a thriller about the game. It's part of this big mystery where all these cogs are turning in this like grand design, and then she's gone.
Yep.
Which, I mean, a lot of characters in the first act are just gone and you never see them again. So It's like, why would I expect her to be any different? It's like, oh no, she's actually like one of the most important elements of the story.
So the craziest thing is I am really mixed on this game, because I think this is a game of really low lows and really high highs. And I think maybe if this team had a chance to work on another game with someone with a little bit more story experience, narrative experience, then their next game could really be like a 9 out of 10 experience, because there are clearly elements they have down to a T. I think, we've talked about it a lot, but the art in this game is fantastic.
True. It's like phenomenal.
Some of the it's like probably top 5 pixel art like games I've played. It's not as good as Norco, like visually, but it's up there.
I think it's comparing apples to oranges with Norco.
Yeah.
The
styles are very different.
The inspirations are clearly
Sure.
worlds apart. But like the set pieces, great. The characters, great. Like even like small details like the water and the foliage and the shadows.
Yeah.
Very good.
And obviously big shout out to the music. Joel Korvitz just killed it this entire this is for me a top 10 video game OST. And it goes crazy, and I cannot believe
on such a mid game.
Yeah, I cannot believe how good the music is sometimes. Like I will listen to the soundtrack just to like remember. And there's like 80. I don't remember exactly how many tracks. There's a lot. There's a lot of tracks, and a lot of them are pretty short and just repeat. And we have a lot of these like repeating songs throughout the game that give you an easy like check-in of like what the intent of the scene is, which is fine. But it really soars when there are those songs that are only for one moment, because those are the ones that stick out the most, especially as it pertains to the songs that play in Chapter 8 as you're approaching the ending. So I probably wouldn't recommend people play Eastward. It's one of those things where it's like, I want people to experience it. I don't necessarily know if I want people to play it, because there's a lot of this game that is just kind of whatever.
I think if you find yourself to be a more gameplay forward person, if you can suspend disbelief on narrative more than we can, gameplay also really good.
Yeah.
Gameplay is also like
a little easy, but
whatever,
it's okay.
This is not the game does not advertise itself as Dark Souls.
Yeah.
It's fine. But like the combat is satisfying to learn. The level design is really interesting. The dungeon design is really cool. Great.
Now, obviously, we didn't play any of the Octopia expansion. I assume that there is not any story-relevant information stored in any of that.
Let's hope. If not, we're going to look like real fools.
If you're a big Eastward fan and you've played the Octopia stuff, and there's some narratively relevant things that relate to the main story, let us know. I'd love to hear about them, because that would be pretty interesting to me to see if they've like fixed some of the holes in the story by talking about them in this.
What's the opposite of a hole? Very full cylinders.
Yeah.
Trim down some of the very full cylinders in unnecessary parts.
So play Eastward if you're big into like visual style, or you like games that have that are very good at portraying its themes through evocative music. It's probably one of the weakest narrative games narratively we've played, But I think there is a lot to love if you are a big fan of indie games. And I think that's the best way I can put it.
Yeah. I think if you're a big story person, this one's a skip. I'm pretty confident saying that. Now, would I have played it without the constraints of having to do it for the pod? I think yes. I think I enjoyed it enough for that. Monk Hollywood is a huge mark against.
It's so bad. So
we
bad.
cannot overstate. We've railed on it. It's worse.
It's bad.
awful.
I don't know what they were thinking. What are you doing? But yeah. So that's Eastward. Next episode, we're going to be talking about Off, in all caps, Off.
I'm so excited for this.
It is probably one of the first big RPG Maker hits. It was from that era where like RPG Maker games were all the rage.
Indie RPG Maker games from when I was in high school is so deep in my bag.
Yeah.
I will be so in my lane that episode. I'm so excited.
It's going to be a good one. And Buck will be joining us again.
Thank God.
Yeah, Buck will be a little bit more touch and go with us this season. You know, we're still very excited to have him on the episodes that he's able to be with us for, but we will have some new guests this season that'll be joining us to kind of help fill in while Buck's not able to join us. So look forward to that, and we will catch you all next time.
Bye, everyone.